Story 1. My stepfather destroyed my life because he thinks my stepbrother deserves my fiancée more than I do. So let me start this off by saying I apologize for how long this may be. My dad passed when I was 15. Him and my mom weren't all that close by that time, so while it hit me hard, she wasn't as fazed as you'd expect. I joined the military when I was 17, and in my first year out of the house, my mom remarried. I never really vied with him, just had different personalities and such. He would often make snide remarks and tell me to man up about any inconvenience I'd be upset about. This led to spats between us, and I was often just as at fault as he was for these disagreements, though it never got too serious. I got medically discharged after a little under 5 years, and my mom and him said they'd be happy to have me back in the house. I told them it'd be brief, just until I got on my feet and got a job, and even offered to pay rent, to which they declined. About 3 days into being back home, my stepdad, when alone with me, asked what he thought a fair rent would be. I was confused, but it was his house, so we came to an agreement, and I kept it from my mom, assuming he did not want her to know, as he never mentioned it around her. I never asked for anything from them, not out of spite, I just wanted to do things myself. He had a son from a previous marriage. Him and I didn't share many common interests or anything, but I never had any issues with him. I'd say we got along. The only thing is he was given a lot from them, paid for his schooling, paid for his car, paid for his living arrangements through college, and even after. I was a little less than a year older than him, so he started college right after they married. Like I said, I didn't want or need the help, but it felt lame that he'd get all that assistance, and I was immediately asked for rent. But I digress. I moved out after 3 months, and not long after, met a girl who I was crazy about, and we started dating. It was my first relationship, and I was over the moon the entire time, like in that early relationship haze, but it was just constant. I was very nervous to bring her home. My mom and I were very close, and I always worried she'd be very judgmental of a girl I'd bring home. My worries ended up being unwarranted. They got along extremely well. My GF doesn't have a family, really long story, so my mom and stepdad became like that for her. Her and my mom hit it off extremely well, to the point they were hanging out just the two of them at times, and it made me extremely happy. My stepdad even really liked her, and I felt it brought us closer together, which isn't something I felt I wanted until we were engaged. His dad abandoned his family growing up, and he put himself through school and got a nice high-paying job all by himself, which I had immense respect for him for. About a year in, I knew this was the girl I was going to marry. I told my mom and stepdad, and they both seemed extremely happy. She was practically part of the family already. My mom gave me her engagement ring my dad gave her, which she kept. The job I had didn't pay great, so I figured even if it wasn't the ring, she'd always have it, be a great placeholder when I proposed. My GF told me it wasn't a placeholder, and she absolutely loved it. I was legitimately never happier in my life. We started wedding planning, and my mom and stepdad said they'd help take care of the finances. It was the first time they'd offered to help me financially, and it really meant a lot. Fast forward to about 3 months later, I get a call from my stepdad who said I needed to come over. Felt a bit ominous, but I went over there after work. When I got there, my mom, stepdad, stepbrother, and fiancé, I saw her on the couch and could tell she had been crying. I immediately thought someone had died and went to go sit next to her when my stepdad stopped me. He started hitting me with accusations of me cheating on her for our entire relationship. I was puzzled and told everyone there I don't even text any women I'm not related to besides her. Apparently, some girl had gotten my fiancé's number and told her that we were sleeping together for over a year now, but she didn't know I was in a committed relationship. She sent her screenshots of alleged conversations and knew stuff about me that a random person wouldn't know. I, like a fool, couldn't see what was happening in front of me. I was stunned, saddened, and furious. I begged her from across the room to look at my phone and see I'd never done any of that. Her and my mother were both weeping, and I started to cry. My stepdad called me every word he could think of and escorted me out of the house while telling me if he saw me on his property again, he'd call the police. I spent the next several weeks trying to contact them to no avail. Calls, texts, voicemails, every messaging app out there. Nothing. After those weeks, I got a call from my stepdad who told me to stop trying to contact her and that I was never welcome in his house or around his family again. I tried to call my mother over this time to no avail as well. After about a month, all I got from anyone was a text from my mother saying how sad and disappointed she was. My mom didn't really have much family, so they always spent holidays with my stepdad's side. They all shunned me as well. I saw their Christmas pictures on Facebook with my ex-fiancé, say present, and seemingly in good spirits, which crushed me. The only family I had that would talk to me at all was my dad's brother and his family. Despite that, even they all seemed wary of me too. The only one that I think truly believed me was my uncle. I don't think I'd have made it without him, honestly. He showed me what I'd been missing in fatherly love, and I've never been so grateful for anyone. About 6 months after it all, I moved away from the East Coast and settled out in California, needing to get away from it all. A little less than a year after I moved, I got a call from an area code from back home, which I rarely got anymore. I picked up and it was my stepbrother, whom I promptly hung up on. He called me back and I ignored it, but it stuck with me all day. I decided that if he called back again, I'd pick up, which he did later that night. It was awkward at best. He told me my fiancée was really torn up for a long time. It took her nearly a year to even start looking again for a significant other. I hadn't at all since it ended a few months into her doing so. My stepdad encouraged him to ask her on a date, which he did. Things went okay for the first couple outings, but never really clicked. Apparently, he told my stepdad about that, and the idiot told him, "I didn't get rid of her for nothing. She's a great girl. You need to figure it out with her." I almost collapsed, and it was quickly replaced with anger. Apparently, he had gotten a girl, I still don't know who, to pose as someone I had an affair with and forged some message screenshots to have her send to my fiancé. He told me he'd said it to him about a month ago, and he didn't know what to do. Apparently, it bothered him enough that he couldn't just sit on the info anymore. So he told me and said he was going to tell my mom and fiancé the next day. He called me first as a courtesy so he knew what to say to them regarding me. I told him where I was, and that I'd appreciate it if they didn't immediately contact me, so I had some time to digest it all. That was last Tuesday. I just texted him and told him I was ready to talk to them if they wanted to, and that they could call me tomorrow. I really don't know what I'm going to say to them or them to me for that matter. I expect some tears and a good number of apologies, among other things. I don't really know if I'm ready to give forgiveness or anything like that. The only person I've told so far is my uncle, who I've asked to keep it to himself. Sorry again for how long this was. My therapist picked a week to go on vacation, and I needed to vent. Update. We'll post a longer update tonight, I think. No phone calls from anyone else yet, but a good call from my stepbrother that felt nice. I appreciate the support from everyone. I'll try to get to all the comments as well when I get a chance. Update. My stepdad turned my family against me. February 6th, 2023. Alright, sorry for the delay. Busy day at work and obviously a lot of other stuff on my mind. My stepbrother called me this morning and told me exactly what happened this past week. So apparently what my stepfather said wasn't exactly what he told me. He elaborated more and said he was very careful with his words so as to not incriminate himself. He implied heavily and very clearly what he did without directly saying what he did. The thing about my stepbrother is he's much smarter than me. Instead of just walking to my mother and fiancé with that and getting into a shouting match with his dad, he took a different course that I wouldn't have thought of. He got a hold of my ex's phone and found the girl. Said it took him forever to backtrack it. He gave her a call and got her to meet him out in public. That's where it all came to a head. She was a Tinder match with my stepfather, which I think pretty clearly indicates that he had been sleeping around on my mom. That irritated me even more for obvious reasons. This girl alleges they did not sleep together, however. Whether that is the truth did not matter to me. What does is my stepbrother talked to her and pulled on her heartstrings with the story and all that had happened. For the record, she clearly knew what she was doing. Maybe the time and hearing what had happened to me really shook her up, but again, it doesn't matter to me. She told him what happened. $1,000 for a phone call, that was the deal. He told her what to say and supplied the pictures of evidence. She made the call and that was that. My stepbrother asked her if she could tell my mother and ex, and even offered to pay her again. For the record, she agreed to do it for free, and that happened on yesterday. My stepfather is on a business trip until Wednesday, so it was the four of them there. She came in and spilled it all to my mom, and ex-stepbrother said the tears started almost immediately from all three of them. After everything, he told them I was in California and that he'd tell them when I wanted to be contacted. This was before I texted him. A little backstory for you guys to try to understand some stuff about my mother and ex-fiancé. And this is in no way defending their actions, just to help. Backstory. Some folks understand my mother and I were inseparable after my dad passed. We were each other's rock. When I turned 16, I began to drink to kind of dull it all a bit. I told my mom we'd spend New Year's together the year I was 16, and ended up out with my friends, drunk as all hell. I got a text from my mom who spent the night alone at home, and that was where we were never quite the same. She sent me a text about how sad she was all alone, and I felt like complete shit over it. I stopped drinking that day until after everything went to hell. She is the type of person to always need someone. She can't handle being alone. I think when her and my dad's love began to fade, I filled that void, and when I was growing and ended up leaving home, my stepfather filled that void. Then my ex, as I said earlier, she doesn't have a family, really. She had some real trust issues due to this, along with some really nasty past relationships. Despite this, she never would talk badly about past boyfriends, which I really admired. One was physically abusive, and I consider that an obvious exception. I, despite being debilitatingly shy, have been often told that I'm cute, especially by younger girls, meaning younger than me, not children. I really never liked that title, as it's not very masculine, but got over it and learned to appreciate my boyish face and how often I would blush. My fiancé is just shy of 3 years older than me. I've always preferred older girls and never given much time or thought to the girls who seemingly liked me because they were 18 to 20. This didn't stop attention, which upset my fiancé. She'd often ask why I wasn't interested in these girls, why I didn't leave her for someone younger and prettier, etc. I always found her extremely attractive, significantly more attractive than me, honestly, and would always reiterate that to her and that I never cared about any other girl. Okay, sorry to get off track. That again, I hope, brings a little insight to why I think they did what they did and believed what they believed. Again, this is not an excuse for them, nor am I really all that understanding personally. At the end of the call with my brother, he said they both wanted to call today, and I told him that it'd be fine. So I sat and waited. By about 3 p.m., I was a little confused. I started to wonder if he'd made it all up to mess with me. It really worried me, honestly. I got a text from him asking if I was all good. I said yeah and asked if they were actually planning on calling today. He said they'd been trying for the last few hours. I'd blocked them both when I moved out west and forgotten why I didn't block him. I don't know. I'm thankful I didn't, though. I unblocked them both and got a call from my mom about 10 minutes later. First thing she said was I sounded different. I almost hung up right then. Took all I had to just say yeah. She broke down immediately after that. I really thought I'd feel more. I'd be lying if I said I felt nothing. But the pain of it all just took hold of me more than her words. She asked if I'd gotten her texts. I said no. I guess she'd been trying to text over the last year, but I had her number blocked. If she really wanted to reach me, she could have. Maybe that's a little shitty, but I know it's true. I pretty much told her that I'd be willing to build some semblance of a relationship back with time, and she was happy with that. She also told me she was getting all her necessities out of the house before my stepfather got home, and she'd be filing for divorce immediately. I believe her too. She may be a poor excuse for a mother in my eyes, but she's never been someone to take half measures. I really wish I could be there to see the prick's face when he comes back to an empty home. My ex got the phone next and did the same tearful apologies my mom did. I felt a little more with her. I actually tried to get her to think and remember how many times I told her I'd never do that to her and how much I loved her. She was beside herself, and to be honest, I'm glad we talked. For about half an hour, and I really thought it was pleasant. Though I told myself for over a year now that it had never happened again, thought there could still be something for us. She told me she still had the ring, and it made me upset. I told her to give it to my mom 'cause it didn't belong to either of us anymore. I could tell that really crushed her, and selfishly, I wanted it too. She asked if she could call/text me. I told her it was fine, but to not expect a prompt response either way, which she understood. Pretty much gave her the same ultimatum as my mom, though I said any chances of us having a future relationship were very slim. She said she understood that too. I talked to my brother last and thanked him for everything he'd done. He was helping my mom get her stuff out of his father's house. He apologized for all that had happened and told me he was going to go tell the rest of the family everything as well. Them I have no connection to and won't say a word to. I don't imagine, except my stepdad's mother, oldest person in any of the families, and she wished me a happy birthday and Merry Christmas over the last year. Maybe she was old enough that she doesn't care. Maybe she felt bad, but I'll talk to her. Odd as it is. Sorry for all the rambling. I fly home for my uncle's 60th birthday the first week of March. It'll be my first time home since I moved out here. I'll definitely plan on seeing my brother as well. I'm not adverse to seeing my mom and ex, but I've made it clear to them that I've got a lot of healing to do, and so do they. If anything further happens, I'll update again. Maybe after that trip home, but that looks like it for the time being. Also, this is kind of the last social media I have. I haven't been on here super often in the last year for the reasons I'm sure you could guess. I truly haven't seen any similar stories to mine that have been referenced in the comments, though I'd like to if you can find them. I'm more than happy to answer any questions anyone would have regarding this whole update thing to the best of my knowledge. Thank you everyone. Brief update on February 8th. Got a call from a number back home. I deleted most of my numbers a while ago from anyone I wasn't talking with. I picked up and it was my stepfather. He said hello, and I hung up and blocked the number. I immediately called my mom, fiancé, and brother. They're all safe, not around him. Mom is in a hotel that he doesn't know about. Fiancé and brother are at their residences and both say they feel adequately protected. He is not, by any indication, a violent man, but better safe than sorry. My brother said he got a call from him this morning when he got home after my mom wasn't there and wouldn't answer. Brother told him what happened and not to contact any of them. Not sure how long he sat there, but he called me around 3 p.m. Pacific about an hour ago. I got a message from a different number saying, "We need to talk." I assume that's him. I haven't responded. That's the latest. Brief update February 9th. Stepdad's mother called me. Had her number saved because of what I previously stated. Was a bit worried it may have been him trying to gather some info or something. It wasn't. She's a very sweet lady who did not have to be nice to me in any way, but has shown me compassion. She was very nice and wished me well while also apologizing on behalf of the family. I thanked her and wished her the best too. Shocking, he came from that woman. Update to my stepdad turned my family against me. All right. Sorry for the delay, everyone. Work has been busy, and I just got home this past weekend. I sat on that message from what it turns out was, in fact, my stepfather. My curiosity got the better of me and I called him. I did do what some had suggested and recorded the call using a different app. I wish I could say the call provided me something, but that would be disingenuous. Hearing his voice made my skin crawl. He asked how I was. I told him to cut the shit and he laughed. Nothing incriminating on his end, of course. Talk was about 3 minutes long about nothing. I did ask him why he wasn't content with me being with her. He said I wasn't man enough and that a woman like her would have been wasted on me. He has a very traditional way of thinking relationship-wise, which is especially funny because it shows how much he never knew about our relationship or her in general. Without going off on a tangent, my ex is pretty notably against gender norms. She has a very well-paying job and told me she'd never be comfortable being a stay-at-home mom. She often took the initiative for stuff in our relationship, etc. There wasn't really much to take away from the conversation other than that I don't really know what he wanted. But I told him not to call me again and hung up. Not very eventful on that front. I flew back home prior to the weekend last week and went to my uncle's birthday party. Had a good time, and the family was very welcoming and apologetic for not being more supportive after everything. None of them were ever rude or anything. I've got no negative feelings towards any of them. I talked with my brother and set up a meeting at his place with my ex and mother on Wednesday night. On Wednesday, I went over there and got what I expected. A lot of tears, a lot of apologies. I admittedly had a tough time keeping it together. I talked with both of them and my brother all independently. Mom has already filed for divorce, which is good, and I appreciate her doing so. We had a decent conversation. You can tell it's strange, but I think we're making some progress towards healing. My brother and I had a good talk. It was nice to talk with him in person. He apologized for everything that had happened, and I accepted it. Can definitely tell he feels remorse for how it all shook out and for the work he put in to make it right. I definitely don't hold a grudge. My ex and I had a very long discussion through most of the night. We'd been talking over the phone for the last couple weeks already. A lot of it was just catching up. We're obviously two very different people now after nearly a year and a half away. We had some more serious discussions later on about everything, about how screwed up it all was and how broken I was by it all. She told me she'd already seen a therapist and asked if I would be willing to come with her to her appointment Thursday. She's gone above and beyond for everything I could have asked of her the last few weeks, and I am really truly appreciative of it. I went with her to her therapy appointment, which I feel was very productive for everyone. Her therapist seemed to be very appreciative of me being there as well. So we stayed talking for a while after, and I decided to ask if she wanted to go out Saturday night. So that's the plan right now. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I wanted to show her that I appreciate the effort she's putting in to try and mend what's been broken, and selfishly, I'd like to see her in a setting that isn't like the ones we've been in. So that's the update for now. Things are looking up. Haven't seen any of my stepdad or his family since getting home. Appreciate all the support from everyone. We'll update with anything new. Update March 5th. The date went very well. We had a nice night together. Got dinner, went to an arcade after, which we used to do somewhat frequently. It's the first date I've been on in nearly a year and a half, and I enjoyed myself a lot. We went back to her place after and talked. Going to discuss the next steps during this week before I head back to California. The distance part is going to be the hardest part, but I think it'll help keep the rose-colored glasses off if we aren't eating each other constantly. Thank you again for the support from everyone. Update July 10th. A lot of folks were asking for another update. Thanks, TikTok. I have remained in contact with my brother, mom, and ex-brother, and I still talk a reasonable amount. Mom and I have been building back, definitely some improvements there. I'm truly glad she's back in my life, even if it's going to take some time for her to really be like a mother to me again. My ex and I spent a long time trying to see what was the best way to go about things. She flew out and spent time with me in California, which was very nice. At the moment, we're not together, and I think that's best for right now. As for my ex-stepfather, I really have no clue. He tried to contact my mother a few times following everything, but he never got a chance to talk. He hasn't been in contact with me at all, and for that, I'm thankful. Hope I never run into him again. Life changes. I did end up moving back east for a new job, a few states away from my family still, which I think is healthy. I'm happy to answer any other questions you guys might have. Thank you for all the support in this madness. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. My wife left me after she got in shape, and now wants to get back together. I'm not sure why I am posting this. I probably want some validation, as my life turned upside down recently. I was married to my wife for 4 years, and we had a great marriage so far. I was madly in love with my wife. She fell into depression mainly due to her job in 2022. I tried to support her in every way and suggested her going to the gym or doing any kind of sports to distress. I had my own depression episode before we got married, and what saved me was going to the gym. She agreed to that, and we started going there together. I could not go as frequent as in the past since my workload got heavier after my promotion. However, I tried my best to be there with her. She used to be a bit chubby, which I loved, and after seeing some changes with her body, she started to go there regularly. It also helped her with depression, and she got better. I was really happy to see her get better and livelier. She looked more confident, got more aggressive in bed, and so on. However, after a while, that confidence level started to affect our relationship for the worse. She started going to parties and going outside to a point she completely stopped doing her share in the house. That proceeded with me seeing her getting flirty with a guy at a meetup we went to. I communicated my feelings to her, and she dismissed these. After several of these, I had her sit down with me and told her that she is riding high on her newly found confidence and emotions right now. I clearly stated she should not make decisions or actions according to that confidence right now. I know it well. It was one of my worst traits. I used to be extremely emotionally driven in the past. I suggested we go to a marriage counselor, and hell broke loose. She said things to me like how she realized she settled down with me after getting better, and she could do much better than me. She said I am insecure and other things. This woman used to be the sweetest person on the earth, and I was shocked after hearing the things she said to me. She filed for divorce the following month, and I did not hear much from her other than some lawyer talks. Our court seeing is scheduled to be next month, and my lawyer told me there is a high chance it'll be concluded then. There is not much to share. Similar income, only shared asset is our joint account, similar savings, and no kids. The house is my mom's, so it's out of division. I accepted my marriage is going to end like that. Last week, she called crying and told me she regrets everything. She apologized over and over again, but I felt disappointed. Not angry, not sad, but just disappointed. She did not text me nor call me even once since the divorce war started. I did not even know where she was since she just left the home. I told her there is no going back now. She has been messaging me nonstop. My family supports my decision and tells me I should not back down. My in-laws were shocked when they heard about the divorce. They are now telling me to rethink everything. I will for sure not back down, but as I said, just looking for validation and maybe wanted to vent. Now on to the next story. Story 3. Fiancé forgot to hang up and I heard everything they said about me. So here's the full story. I'm a 25-year-old woman, and up until last week, I was all set to get married. But things took a huge turn, and I ended up running away the night before the big day. My boyfriend, who's also 25, and I had been together for 3 years, and we were engaged for 6 months of that time. Together we have 2 kids, twin boys who are just a year old. Having them wasn't something we planned, and initially my boyfriend really didn't want to go through with the pregnancy. But I've always known I wanted to be a mom. I felt that maternal pull strongly, and when we found out about the twins, it just felt like the right time for me, even if it wasn't perfect timing. So I stood my ground. I told him that I was having our babies whether he was on board or not. I even said he could walk away if he wanted to, and I wouldn't chase him for child support. I was determined to raise my children on my own if I had to. However, he did need some time to wrap his head around everything. When I told him I was ready to end our relationship if he kept pushing me to not have our baby, that's when he started to come around. During my pregnancy, he was really supportive, and after our boys were born, he stepped up as a dad. I'll admit having twins was a lot more than I bargained for, and looking back, I'm not sure I could have managed without him. So in a way, I was grateful he stayed. Fast forward 6 months, he proposed and I said yes. It felt like we'd moved past his initial reluctance about becoming a dad. He was so involved in caring that it seemed like his earlier resistance had never happened. I guess becoming a mom softened me a bit too, and I was ready to let bygones be bygones and start this new chapter with him. After all, we'd been through a lot together already, 3 years of a relationship and a pretty intense pregnancy. We spent months planning our wedding, and I was genuinely happy. My parents were over the moon too because they really liked my ex. He'd always been the perfect guy in their eyes. Everything was going smoothly, and it felt like all the pieces were falling into place. But then, just one night before we were supposed to get married, everything fell apart. I still can't wrap my head around how a single phone call could end a relationship that had lasted for 3 years. But it did. That call made me realize that marrying him would have been a huge mistake. The day before our wedding, following tradition, my ex and I were staying in separate places. So there I was in our place, just hanging out after dinner while my boyfriend was at his family's house not too far away. We had this sweet phone call where he was all lovey-dovey, telling me how much he loved me and how pumped he was about us getting married soon. That call really got me feeling all the feels, and we had this nice emotional exchange before saying bye to each other. But then he didn't end the call properly. You know, sometimes you think you've hung up, but you haven't really pressed the button hard enough? Yeah, that's what happened. So because he didn't hang up right, I could still hear what was going on his end. His dad started talking to him, asking him if he was chatting with me. I got a bit nosy and decided to listen in, just to see what they were talking about. And boy, what I heard next was something straight out of a drama movie. It's been a whole week, and I still can't stop thinking about it. His dad asked him if he was still feeling the same way he did a couple of days back. And my ex was like, yeah. Then his mom joined the convo, and she was all about pushing him to just suck it up and get married no matter what he was feeling. My ex got a bit heated and tried to stand up for himself, saying he should be able to make his own choices and that they shouldn't be able to push him around like that. But then his dad dropped a bombshell. He was like, look, we can't force you to marry someone you don't love, but what we can do is cut you out of the will if you don't. So basically, my ex was stuck between a rock and a hard place, get married or get nothing. His mom then went on this whole spiel about him needing to grow up and take responsibility, especially now that he was a dad. She was pretty harsh, saying it was bad enough he had kids out of wedlock, but he could sort of fix that by marrying me instead of dragging his feet because he wasn't ready. My ex tried to argue back, saying it was totally unfair for them to corner him into marrying me just so he wouldn't be left out of the will. He was really upset, talking about how nobody ever cares if he's ready for big life events or not. He felt constantly pushed into situations he wasn't prepared for, like becoming a dad and now getting married. He said it was scary enough having kids when he wasn't sure he was ready, and now his parents were forcing him into a marriage he wasn't sure about either. So yeah, that's the extended version. Hearing all this secretly, without him knowing I was still on the line, was a lot to process. It was clear he was feeling trapped and stressed about the whole marriage thing, and his parents weren't making it any easier by putting all that pressure on him. After discovering all this, my head was spinning. My boyfriend, the guy I was about to marry, didn't actually want to get married. He felt forced into it because he was scared of losing his inheritance. He thought we were all being super unfair to him for pushing him into this corner. And then, just like in a dramatic scene from a movie, he got so upset that he just stormed out of the room, leaving his phone behind by mistake. His parents kept talking right after he left, going on about how they thought he was being irresponsible. That's when I realized I couldn't listen anymore and hung up. I was completely shocked, frozen in place, not sure what I was supposed to do next. Finding out that the only reason my boyfriend agreed to marry me and stick around was because of his parents' threat to cut him out of the will was a massive blow. And to learn this bombshell the night before our wedding, it was too much. Couldn't wrap my head around it. For a few minutes, I just sat there trying to process everything. Up until this moment, his actions had given me no hint that he was feeling trapped. Sure, we had hit a rough patch when I first found out I was pregnant, but after we got through that, he seemed to be fully on board, being a great partner and dad to our twins. I was clueless about his real feelings. He had been putting on quite the performance, pretending to be happy and supportive. I have to admit, he was really good at it. Once the initial shock wore off, I knew I had to leave. I couldn't go through with the wedding, not with this heavy secret hanging over us. I had my kids with me, so I gathered up a few things, got them into the car, and drove off to find a hotel somewhere out of town. By the time we arrived, it was late, and the kids were understandably upset from the disruption. I did my best to calm them down and get them back to sleep. Then, with a heavy heart, I blocked my boyfriend and his whole family on my phone. I spent that entire night crying, mourning the relationship and the future I thought we had. The realization that the past year had been nothing but a lie was crushing. Finally, exhaustion took over and I fell asleep around 4 in the morning, completely drained. The financial aspect of the wedding, the venue, the decorations, everything that had been paid for, was all covered by my ex and his wealthy parents. Considering the circumstances, I wasn't concerned about the money lost. They were the ones who wanted this wedding in the first place so they could deal with the fallout. After all, they were the ones who had orchestrated this mess. So it was only fitting they bear the consequences of how everything unraveled. So I was out of there faster than you can say wedding disaster. I didn't even wait to get some sleep. I grabbed my phone and sent a message to all my friends and family telling them the wedding was off and I'd fill them in on the details later. I didn't spill any beans right then and there. I made it super clear to my crew that I didn't want them anywhere near my ex or his family. I was like, don't talk to them, don't answer their calls, nothing. And because my friends and family are awesome, I knew they'd listen to me, no questions asked. The day that was supposed to be my wedding day, I spent it in a hotel room, just me and my twin boys. We ate a bunch of snacks and played around, trying to make the best of a pretty lousy situation. Inside, I was a mess, heartbroken and feeling all sorts of upset, but I had to keep it together for my kids. They needed me to be strong, so I put on my bravest face for them. After taking a day to just be with my boys and process everything, I decided it was time to face the music. I dropped my kids off at my parents' house for a bit and headed back to our place to pick up my things and say goodbye to that chapter of my life for good. When I saw my ex again, he was exactly how I imagined he'd be. Looking all worn out, anxious, and throwing a mix of concern and panic my way. To this day, I'm not sure if he was really worried or if it was just another performance. He immediately started bombarding me with questions about where I'd been, saying he was super worried. Before I could even get a word in, he was off on a rant about how they all waited for me at the wedding venue and how what I did was totally out of line. He said I owed them an explanation and even a public apology because apparently getting cold feet isn't a good enough reason to leave him and his family hanging. I barely reacted to his whole spiel. I just hit him with the truth that I heard the conversation he had with his parents, the one where it all came out how he really felt about marrying me. He looked totally lost for a second, but when he realized what I was talking about, he couldn't hide the guilt. I didn't stick around to argue or listen to any excuses. I walked past him, went inside to grab my stuff, and left without looking back. There was nothing left to say. He made his choices, and now I was making mine. The whole idea of being his wife, that ship had sailed, and I wasn't about to board it again. After everything that happened, my biggest priority was just to focus on being the best mom I could be. It's almost been a whole week since the day I thought I'd get married, and since then, there's been total silence between us. I figured that was the universe's way of telling me it's over between me and him. I had nothing left to say, and I thought he felt the same. But life had another twist waiting for me. Just a couple of hours ago, out of the blue, he showed up at my parents' house, practically begging for a chance to talk to me. By this time, I had already spilled the beans to my parents and all my close friends about the mess. They all knew the gritty details, so it's no surprise they were not exactly thrilled to see him standing at the doorstep. Despite their hesitation, something in me said I should hear him out, just this once. But there was no way I was letting him inside. The twins had just drifted off to sleep, and the last thing I needed was a shouting match with him that would end up waking them. So we ended up standing in the front yard under the stars, having what felt like the most surreal conversation. He started off with an apology, trying to explain himself. He said he truly loved me and the kids despite not feeling ready to tie the knot. He admitted everything he did and said that night was a mistake, but he still wanted to be part of our lives. Listening to him, I was torn. How could I just wipe the slate clean after he deceived me for so long? Trusting him again wasn't going to be easy, and I was drowning in doubts. Yet part of me wondered if there was a way forward. I told him I'd need time to think about everything. He seemed to understand, saying he didn't want to break up and hoped we could find a way to start fresh, without his parents' influence this time. I'm at a crossroads, unsure of what to do next. The idea of my children growing up with their dad around is important to me, but how can I move past the lies? My trust in him has been broken into pieces, and honestly, after the roller coaster of this past week, I'm just mentally and emotionally drained. I need a moment to breathe, to figure things out without any pressure. So I'm left pondering the big question. What if I decide that trying again with him isn't the right choice for me or the kids? What then? Update 1. Hey everyone. It's been a minute since my last update. Huh? Life's been pretty hectic lately with work, taking care of my kids, and the whole process of moving out, so I haven't really found the time to fill you all in. First off, I've got to say the amount of support and love I've received from all of you has been absolutely incredible. I'm seriously blown away by how kind and supportive so many of you have been, and I'm deeply grateful for every piece of advice you've shared. It's all been super helpful as I navigate through this whole situation. So yeah, I've been talking to a lawyer about sorting out the custody for my kids. I've made the tough decision that I don't want to try fixing things with my ex. It's funny though, how some folks decided to send me mean messages calling me selfish for even thinking about getting back with him. That felt really harsh and quite unfair, to be honest. Look, I'm a mom, sure, but I'm also just a person. It's only been a week since that life-changing phone call, and we were together for 3 whole years. Of course, I hadn't just magically gotten over him overnight. Back then, I was caught up in all my feelings. I truly loved him, which made me think about giving it another shot. Now though, I'm feeling a lot clearer-headed, and I realize that I've got to focus on what's best for me and my little ones. Getting back with him just isn't the right move. I mean, all that hate and judgment really wasn't necessary. But then again, it's the internet. I guess I should have expected as much. I started looking for a lawyer just a couple of days after the wedding was called off. It took a bit of time to find the right one, someone I felt comfortable with and could really trust. The whole topic of custody never came up between my ex and me before all this went down. We never imagined we'd end up here having to figure all this out. Okay, so here's the deal. Now that my ex and I have officially called it quits, I've started to think a lot about what needs to happen next, especially when it comes to my kids. The thought of someone trying to take them away from me is something I can't even bear to think about. While I'm pretty sure my ex wouldn't actually try to do something like that, I'm not so confident about his parents. They have some pretty old-fashioned views and are super strict about how things should be done in a family. I'm almost 100% sure they're not going to be okay with the idea of their son not having custody of his children. They're the type who would do just about anything to make sure things go their way, so I'm bracing myself for whatever might come next. The last conversation I had with my ex was about 3 days ago, and since then, it's been complete silence on his end. This silence is pretty telling, to be honest. It just confirms that despite whatever he said about wanting to fix our relationship, he's not really interested in making an effort to be with me or to change his ways. If he truly meant what he said, wouldn't he have made some kind of effort to check in on me or the kids? But no, I haven't heard a peep from him. This is how I know for sure that not getting back together with him is the right decision. Trust between us has completely disappeared, and there's no way I can be with someone who doesn't genuinely want to be with me. It's clear that moving on is the best thing for me. I'm gearing up to let him know my decision soon, particularly about the custody stuff. I'm really hoping he doesn't freak out or get angry about it because dealing with a big fight over custody is the last thing I need right now. So I'm just preparing myself for that conversation, hoping it goes as smoothly as possible, but also preparing for it to possibly get a bit messy. The main thing is I need to do what's best for my kids, and ensuring they stay with me is at the top of my list. I just want to move forward without any more unnecessary drama or complications. Update 2. Alright, so here's the thing. I finally got up the nerve to have a really important chat with my ex. I told him straight that getting back together just wasn't in the cards for us. I also mentioned that I was planning to go ahead and file for full custody of our kids. I kind of expected him to be okay with it, or at least not too upset, because he's been pretty open about not feeling ready for all the responsibilities that come with marriage and being a dad. I thought maybe he'd be somewhat relieved that I wasn't trying to force him into a situation he clearly wasn't ready for. But boy, did things not go as I expected. Instead of being understanding or even a bit grateful, he got super upset. We ended up in this big argument right there. He insisted that breaking up with him was one thing, but taking the kids away was something he couldn't stand for. Now, if we were just any normal couple, maybe his reaction would make a bit more sense. But given everything you all know about our situation, it just didn't add up. Let's not forget, this is the guy who, up until just a week ago, didn't even want to be a dad. He made it clear he wasn't ready for this kind of responsibility. Yet here he was suddenly all about fighting for custody of our kids. It screamed that something weird was going on. Probably his parents trying to call the shots from behind the scenes. The whole time we were arguing, he was freaking out, and I was there trying to get him to lower his voice because, guess what, we were in the middle of a restaurant and it was getting seriously embarrassing with all the stares we were getting. After a bit, he started to calm down, and I figured it was my chance to try and talk some sense into him. The last thing I wanted was a long, messy custody battle. Financially, I just wasn't in a place to go up against his parents and their deep pockets. They could afford top-notch lawyers that could drag this thing out forever. And even putting money aside, I was just too drained to even think about going through with that kind of fight. I knew his parents had the means to make this difficult for me, even if I felt I was in the right. So I did my best to reason with him. I reminded him that just a week ago, he was saying he wasn't ready for kids. I was trying to make him see that moving forward with me having full custody was the best thing for everyone, especially given how he felt not too long ago. It was a tough conversation, trying to get him to see my point of view without things escalating again. I just hoped he'd see reason and not make this harder than it needed to be. I mean, I wanted our kids to have their dad in their lives, but not like this, not with so much tension and uncertainty. So yeah, that's where I was at, trying to navigate this super tricky situation and figure out the best way forward for me and the kids. So there I was, ready to take on the full responsibility of looking after our kids all by myself. Honestly, that's exactly what I wanted from the beginning. And him? Well, he got the chance to live his life without any strings attached. No worries about being tied down by marriage or the daily duties of looking after kids. I kind of thought that's what he wanted too, so in my mind, everyone was getting what they wanted out of the deal. It seemed like the perfect plan. But then, out of nowhere, he hits me with this news that he's changed his mind. Now he says he's totally ready to be a dad. That just didn't sit right with me at all. I mean, think about it. If he spent a whole year feeling unsure about being a dad, there's just no way he could suddenly decide he's ready in just a week. It didn't make any sense. So I had to ask him straight up if he was keeping something from me because his sudden change of heart was setting off alarm bells left and right. And guess what? He finally spilled the beans. The real reason he was suddenly all about fighting for custody was because of a chat he had with his parents. Honestly, I wasn't too surprised by that. After I told him I knew the whole story and called off our wedding, he ran straight to his parents, who then told him he needed to patch things up with me and fast. That's why a week later, he was back trying to convince me everything could be okay between us. His parents had finally accepted that I wasn't going to marry him. That was no longer an option. But they were totally against the idea of him not having a part in his kids' lives. They even went as far as to threaten to cut him off financially if he didn't convince me to agree to a joint custody arrangement. There he was, begging me to consider sharing custody of our kids. But hearing all this just made me feel sick. I was so over it. It was clear as day that he was only doing his parents' bidding because, in the end, what he really cared about was keeping his hands on his parents' money, not genuinely wanting to be there for me or the kids. He had shown no real interest in being a part of our lives, no real commitment to us, until it looked like he might lose out on his inheritance. And that's when he decided to play the role of the concerned dad. If the only thing motivating him was his parents' wealth, then I didn't want him anywhere near us. Our kids deserve so much more than a dad whose only interest in them is tied to money. I didn't even bother with the idea of child support because I just wanted him completely out of our lives. I wanted nothing to do with him, no connections, no reasons for him to think he had any right to be involved with me or our children anymore. So my ex, he's kind of the type who doesn't really stand up for himself, especially when it comes to his parents. It's pretty clear he'd do just about anything to make sure they don't kick him out of their lives or cut him off financially. Honestly, it's kind of sad to see. A few days have passed since all that drama, and I've gone ahead and blocked him on every possible platform because I can't stand the thought of talking to him or even seeing him pop up on my phone. The last thing he tried to tell me was this idea about sharing custody of our kids, and then he threw in this wild idea about splitting his future inheritance with me after his parents are gone. I mean, can you believe that? He's actually suggesting this ridiculous plan just to try and keep things smooth between us. It really makes me think about my judgment for getting involved with someone who's pretty much just a spoiled rich kid. I've always been the kind of person who's worked for everything I've got. My parents did their best for me, but we weren't swimming in money or anything. I had to bust my tail in school to land scholarships for college because that was the only way I could afford it. I've always had to work super hard for everything I have. And then there's my ex. He's the only child of some really wealthy parents, and I think that pretty much says it all. You probably have an idea of the type of person he is. I actually believed he was different when we started dating. He did a really good job convincing me he changed, but man, was I wrong. He deserves an award for his acting because he totally had me fooled for the last 3 years. Now though, I see him for who he really is, and I've got no interest in sticking around to discover anything else about him. I'm completely done with that chapter of my life. I'm totally okay with raising my kids by myself. Having no dad around is way better than having one who doesn't even want the job. Now I'm 100% sure leaving him was the best decision. I just hope he realizes he should give up his parental rights instead of dragging us through a messy custody fight. That's what I'm praying for, at least. Update 3. Hey folks, it's been quite some time since I've popped in here with an update, and boy, do I have some stories to share. Life has been nothing short of a whirlwind lately, and I've been up to my ears in all sorts of changes and adjustments. But let's dive into the good stuff that I've been eager to tell you all about. So, the first big piece of news is about our living situation. Me and my little duo, my adorable twins, have made a move to a new apartment. It's definitely on the smaller side compared to the house where my ex and I used to live, but you know what? It feels like a fresh start, a place that's truly ours and not tied to past memories. It's got its own little charm, and I'm all about making it our cozy haven. Another bonus is that our new place is super close to where my parents live. This is a game changer because it means they can swing by more often to spend time with their grandkids, which they absolutely love. And let's be real, having them nearby for a bit of extra help is a blessing I can't ignore. Plus, on top of that, I've managed to hire a full-time nanny. Juggling work and twin toddlers is no small feat, so having an extra set of hands around the house has been a godsend. I consider myself incredibly lucky to be in a position where I can afford this kind of help. My folks have been pitching in financially too, for which I'm endlessly grateful. This whole scenario wasn't something any of us saw coming, but we're navigating it together, and their support means the world to me. Now, onto the juicy bit that I'm sure has piqued your curiosity, the latest on my ex. In a surprising turn of events, he's officially signed away his parental rights. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what exactly led to this decision. If I had to take a guess, I'd say he's probably had a moment of clarity and chose to stand up to his parents for once. It's a big step, and while the reasons behind it might remain a bit of a mystery, it's a significant development in our ongoing saga. So there's a chance that his parents finally decided to back off and stop pushing him. One of my buddies mentioned that he's not living at his old spot anymore, which kind of hints that he might have decided to stand up for himself and make a big change. A few days back, out of the blue, he got in touch with me again, throwing another apology my way. But this time, he threw in a curveball. He wanted to give me money, kind of like saying sorry with cash. I know some of you might think I'm off my rocker for not accepting it, but to me, it's not about the money. I was dead serious when I said I wanted him out of my life for good. Yeah, hearing him say sorry helps close a chapter, but taking money from him? That just doesn't sit right with me. I'm looking to move forward, not keep some weird financial tie to my past, especially not from an ex. I've got a strong support system with my parents. We're more than ready to tackle raising my kids without needing a single penny from him. So I let him know through a text that I appreciate the offer, but no thanks, and it would be best if we just didn't talk anymore. Surprisingly, he's actually respected that wish up until now. These days, my life is all about my kids. They're my top priority, and I'm dedicating all my energy to making sure they have the best life possible. Holding on to any negative feelings about my ex or wasting energy being upset just isn't in the cards for me. My main mission is to be an amazing mom to my children. That's where all my focus is, and honestly, it's the only thing that really matters to me right now. Now on to the next story. Story 4. My husband was with his girl best friend while I was giving birth. He is not allowed to see our firstborn child. My husband has this best friend, Anna. They've been friends for a long time and dated years ago, mutually deciding that it's best for them to remain friends. I've had no problem with this relationship until now. On the day that I gave birth, Anna's brother got into a car accident. My husband got a call from her in the middle of the night and she asked him if he could drop her at the hospital. Her brother was at an hour away from us, since she was too scared to drive. My husband agreed, told me quickly while I was half asleep, and rushed out. A few hours later, I had contractions and called my husband. He didn't pick up after multiple tries, so I gave up and called my dad, who drove me to the local hospital 12 minutes away. I was so scared of giving birth alone, since I've had about 3 miscarriages and 1 stillborn. My husband promised me that no matter what, he'd be there for me. Guess what? He wasn't. We called multiple times while I was in labor, and when he finally picked up my dad's call when I was giving birth, saying that he'd misplaced his phone in the chaos. My dad informed him that no matter how fast he drives anymore, he's going to miss the birth of his child. Well, my husband took that as he's already screwed up, so it doesn't matter when he shows up at this point. So when he finally came, our daughter was about 5 hours old and I'd already moved to the maternity ward when he came. I refused to let him see our baby. Edit. Did let husband hold and play with baby after discharge because I was so high on emotions and was shaking when I saw him and didn't want it negatively affect my time with the baby. I wanted her birth to be a happy time and I was already struggling to feed her. My husband was in a bad state and told me to please let him see her, so I told him to stand by the window and held the baby up so he could see her. I told him to then leave and he'll be allowed to interact with the baby at my father's home when we're both well and out of the hospital, and that I was most likely divorcing him. He started bawling and apologizing and defended himself by saying that Anna's brother was in serious critical condition, and although he's fine, Anna needed him. Though Anna's parents were there, she's not that close with them and she was in an unbearable state. I told him that I didn't care and that his daughter has already come second to him and all she did was be born. I'm putting my daughter's health first and won't let her be sidelined. My husband agreed and left. However, Anna called me later and said that I was being controlling and she'd never met someone as cruel as me for not letting a father see his baby. I told her that my husband made his decision and that this was his doing, not mine. But now I can't help feel cruel in my actions and feel like I'm depriving my baby of both her parents being together. My husband sees her a few hours each day now. Edit. I feel like this is useful information and could explain why I was so mad. Anna's brother was not in a life/death situation. He had serious injuries, but most were concentrated on his legs and arm. He did have a concussion, but gained consciousness soon. Anna was there along with both her parents who managed all the hospital stuff. My husband was there as an emotional support for Anna. I did let my husband see our baby right after I got discharged. Edit. Husband saw baby. Husband held baby. Husband played with baby. I wanted a couple days of rest and bonding with the baby since my emotions were so high and I was afraid if my husband was a continuous presence, I'd get stressed and something bad would happen. I told him as such. They spend time together, but I'm still cold with him. I may still be the a-hole, I don't know. But I'm still so mad at him and it's not the first time he put Anna before me. I can forgive the other time since I could handle it, but this time was the straw. I was so scared to hold my baby because I was paranoid the minute I touched her. Something would happen to her and no one was there to comfort me. I only had my dad, but he wasn't in the delivery room, which is why I'm not too keen on forgiving my husband. Also, we both knew the baby was due any time now, so I don't understand why my husband didn't have his phone on him. We even tried reaching out to Anna and she didn't pick up either. After he learned I was giving birth, they already knew that Anna's brother was going to be all right. He spent that time making sure that Anna was okay and feeding her, and then waiting for the brother to regain consciousness. He could have come back after seeing his daughter to talk with the brother. He would have made it back in time. Edit. So many of you got it wrong. I'm not preventing him from ever seeing his baby. That is stupid and unreasonable. He literally saw her about a day later when we were discharged and safely at my dad's home. He already didn't see her for 5 hours on purpose and put Anna first. I didn't think an additional day would make much of a difference, and it wasn't to him. He was happy to see the baby and he spends time with her all the time. She's 2 months now. Also, I'm not mad about the fact he went to see Anna. I'm mad that he didn't think we were a high priority to rush back to. He left me so quickly in the middle of the night when I was already late. He couldn't have left Anna in the care of her parents and rushed as soon as possible. She's not a child and she doesn't have any mental health issues either. Edit 3. So sorry for all the edits, but someone just messaged me this. What if my baby was born a stillborn again? He had no way to know since he and I didn't have any contact after I gave birth. Thank the stars my baby is healthy and well, but it was a possibility. Edit. SL update. Thank you everyone for your replies. I think that I was an a-hole for using my child against him and should have told him that he could hold and then asked him to leave. So the divorce is probably going to happen. My brother is looking at lawyers for me in the midst of this whole mess. This post made me realize I never checked on Anna's brother to see how he's healing because I was so worked up by Anna. I called him and he said that he was doing well and will be out of his wheelchair soon. He asked about me and the baby and how I was doing with the split and if I was okay with my husband and Anna. I can't believe I was so oblivious. I thought they had an emotional thing going on because of this, and when I confronted my husband, he denied it and said me and our baby were his priority and he made a mistake and he was being dumb.
Ino.
Anna's brother kindly informed me that he and Anna's parents thought that my husband and I split when I was 7 months pregnant and that Anna and him were back on. He showed up at the hospital as Anna's boyfriend, which is why they didn't bat an eye that he was there and not with his pregnant wife because apparently we split. Her brother's procedures were done well before the afternoon, so I don't know what my husband and Anna were doing for all those hours, but I don't even want to know. If you want more details, I can answer in a comment. Thanks everyone for your kind words and advice. I will be moving back home and filing for full custody. I don't want my baby growing up to be like her father or Anna. He can be fun dad or whatever it is he wants to be. Last edit. I think I'm going to be taking a break from Reddit now because ranting on the internet doesn't seem healthy. Thanks everyone for their support. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Girlfriend broke up with me for entering the washroom while she showered. Context. My girlfriend dumped me after I took a pee while she was in the shower. Here's the situation. I was at my girlfriend's apartment overnight when I woke up. She was already in the shower, and there is only one washroom. So I knocked, then walked in and peed. At the moment, she said nothing. No, I didn't flush the toilet and scale her to put things into perspective because some may think I invaded her privacy. In the past, we've showered together and had no problem sharing the washroom. This day was different, though. When she was done in the washroom, she came out furious at me, saying I invaded her privacy and was inconsiderate. I said I didn't mean to upset her, but there is only one washroom when I really had to pee. She broke up with me then and there. For a couple of weeks before this, I felt things were different between us. She seemed more distant, didn't want to be intimate as often, and started showering by herself. I brought it up, and she told me everything was good and if there were any problems, she'd tell me. That was 2 weeks before the breakup. It's now been 2 weeks since the breakup, and I thought I had come to terms with things until last night when I got a phone call from a private number. It was my ex. She was apologizing profusely, saying she made a mistake and wanted me back. I really do love this girl, but I don't feel like she's being straight with me about everything in the breakup. I asked her if she's seen other people, and she refused to answer until eventually admitted she slept with 3 people since dumping me. To me, it seems like she dumped me to explore other options, and now she sees she made a mistake. Kay wants me back. Should I take her back? Does her reason, given the context, seem legitimate? We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.